What's up, everybody?
Kirk, when you went back and watched the Nebraska game, what was the tale of the two halves? What were the biggest differences you saw from that first half offense to what you saw in the second half?
We played a lot better in the second half. Um, you know, our details were a little bit better. We made a couple plays. We did a better job staying on schedule. With it, but the kids executed better. And they deserve the credit. They played better. Period.
Sort of
Kirk, you've been
opportunities.
around,
Go ahead.
Kirk, you've been around Kenny Burns for quite some time. What are some key traits he brings to the program?
Kenny's a great teacher. Um, the way he can present things, like you sit there and listen. If you ask Kenny, teach me inside zone from the running back's perspective, um, it's fantastic to sit and listen. We do it every year, and it's one of my favorite things when we get to that part of teaching me inside zone. And I take notes like it's the first time I've ever heard him talk with it. So he's a great teacher. He's a really good communicator. Has a great demeanor. But the fact that he's a good communicator allows him to build really strong relationships within that room. And that's really important in that room because they're all thoroughbreds. They all want the ball, and only one of them can get the ball at a time. And the way you see the cohesiveness within that group, and you got to give Kenny the credit for that. The way they compete with, not against, the way they're always talking and trying to help each other out with how they're seeing things. But he's just a great teacher, and that's why they have such a great understanding of our run game and how the schemes work and all that stuff.
What kind of added dimension does Ethan's legs present your offense? Not even just getting outside the pocket, but keeping it on RPOs and kind of scrambling, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that if you're a defense and you're looking at us, Tanner had a lot of big plays for us, like on third down with scrambles and stuff with his legs. But Ethan's a little bit faster, so it makes you be a little bit more disciplined with staying at home. We tell the guys, keep the ball when you know you can beat the defensive end. Well, a guy who's a little bit faster can keep the ball a little bit more often than another guy. So I think it'll help. It definitely, from if you're responsible for the quarterback to the running back, you're going to honor the quarterback just a little bit more when Ethan's in there than Tanner, and it just has to do with he's a little faster.
Is Dylan Wright built on his last week's performance in practice this week?
Yeah, I think so. I really do. He's been real aggressive in practice, attacking the ball, attacking his routes. Dalen's a guy who has a lot of confidence in himself to begin with, but I do think when you go up and make the kind of play that he made on that deep ball, that helps, right? And you can feed off of that and build off of it. I'm excited to see what he does this week.
What's going to be the legacy that you're going to have of John Michael Schmitz in 5, 10 years when you look back on his time at Minnesota?
Yeah, boy, you have to remind me that he's only got a couple more games left, huh?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think the thing about John Michael, the first thing that I noticed about him, besides his talent, right? We saw that when we recruited him out of high school. But the first thing that I noticed about him was how hard he plays and that he really loves football. And he shows you with his actions every day, with it. So, like, that's always going to be, when someone asks me about John Michael, that's the very first thing that pops into my head, how hard he plays. I used to call him, when he was real young here, I used to say, you're my Tasmanian devil. I'm not sure he knew what a Tasmanian devil was. I just was thinking about the old cartoon that I used to watch as a kid with it. But that's what he reminded me of, the way he played every play with it. But as I've watched him grow, he's a great technician too. and Brian Callahan deserves, credit for that too. But, we can teach you till we're blue in the face. You've got to put the action behind it and apply these things to the games, these techniques and details that we talk about. I think he's really grown in the mental capacity of the game. I can remember in 2019, when he first became our starting center, that I was like, boy, he's got to, we got to grow in that area, but he's, boy, oh boy, is he sharp now. But the biggest thing about John Michael that is ingrained in my head is just how hard he plays, besides his talent.
Is there any example, is there any play that practice or in a game that exemplifies that?
I think there's a lot of plays in the game, and there's a lot of plays in practice. Like when you play really, really hard and you're passionate and you love football, it doesn't matter, whether it's practice or whatever. You just go, you just love doing it. And, there's a lot of examples, we call them like necktie plays that, I kind of save to just keep in a locker to be able to show people what we're talking about of, always attack and never fool. And, he always, he's always at the top of the board with those plays consistently every week, every day in practice. He just goes.
Kirk, when you look at Northwestern defense, what concerns you the most?
Everything. Like just the respect that I have, for Coach Fitz and his defensive staff, and I know it's a new defensive coordinator now, but they still play the way Northwestern plays. They play really hard. They're really disciplined. They don't make mistakes. And, when you do that and you combine that with really good players, it's a hard combination to unfold. You know where they're going to be, but they know where you're going to be too, and what you're going to do. And I always enjoyed playing against them because it's a great challenge, and we haven't always had a ton of success, but we played them all the way back at Western Michigan was the first time I played against them, and when the game was over, I was like, wow, they're well coached, and that's always stuck in my head. And I look at this defense, and I just see all the characteristics of their head coach and their defensive staff. And we coached with Tim McGargle at Western Michigan, their linebackers coach, and spent a lot of time talking football with him. And so I know how bright he is. And when I watch his linebackers play on film, it kind of makes me smile sometimes because of how hard and how they key and diagnose things and how quickly they get to their gaps. So they present a lot of challenges. They play a lot of quarters coverage, and I think their secondary is very talented. They do a really good job because really quarters coverage in its simplest form is man-to-man. They have a bunch of wrinkles to it, all the quarters wrinkles and everything, but in its simplest form it's man-to-man, and they do a really good job of covering their people, of playing man coverage.
Kirk, this might be a big question, but having gone to a few different places over the last couple of years and coming back to Minnesota, what's the benefit that you see in the continuity at the program now with PJ here 6 years and kind of having a way of going about doing things?
Well, I think continuity is a great thing. It's a hard thing to establish in this profession, is to have continuity. Guys are moving all over the place. But continuity is a great thing, and anytime you're trying to establish a culture and a process somewhere, you have to fight for your culture every single day that you're there. But the longer you're there, the more people that understand the culture and know what they're doing with it and how it needs to be applied, the better off you are, and I think that's one of the great things about PJ is he's had a lot of staff continuity over his 6 years. And when for a guy that was away for 2 years and I come back, that's one of the first things I noticed, that, the coaches understand the culture here, and, they know how to help teach it to the players and help make sure the players are applying it, and they apply it, because a lot, it's not the message, it's really the messengers when you're trying to establish something. And, PJ has a lot of messengers here. And it's the same thing with the players, right? They've been in these seniors have been in this culture their whole career. So they're better leaders. They're better at applying the culture to their life and to helping the young kids apply it. So you can't underestimate continuity. The other thing is, the great thing about that I saw when I came back here that was different, because it was a new job, right? It was a new job for me. And I came back in here, and the guys, the coaching staff and I had already been together for a long time. So getting on the same page was so much easier than it is when you take a new job and you're surrounded by a bunch of new assistants. It just was so much smoother and so much easier, whereas, it makes your job a lot easier as the coordinator, trying to get everybody on the same page when everybody already understands the culture. They all have been here for a while, right? I had already understood the culture when I came back here, but they also understand the system and how we want to coach the plays. It makes it a lot easier. I tell everybody, all my friends that go take a new job somewhere, I remind them before they take it. I said, listen now, the first year is hard, wherever you're going to go. And, they're like, yeah. And then usually, 4 or 5 months into it, they'll call me to a man and say, golly, you're right. The first year is hard with it, and for a lot of reasons. But it is great when you have continuity within a program and the culture's already established.
One more if anyone's got it.
How do you look at Ariante's first extensive body of work?
I think he's done a good job. I think that having not been here, right, so I come back in January, so I didn't get to see, I only saw Ariante in high school, right? So I didn't get to see, really, you don't know for sure where somebody's at until they actually get here on campus. It's one thing to evaluate the high school film and see the talent and the potential and all that, but it's still a guess, right? And so I wasn't here to see the very beginning of him, but I've seen growth from spring ball through training camp through the season. It's not perfect, but he's getting better and better. Like most young players, right? Most young players have great moments, but that's the first step to becoming a great, great player, is to have these great moments. And then you develop that consistency, and you learn from your experiences that you can apply the next time you're in that situation. And I've seen all of that from him. He's a great kid, fun to be around, and again, very skillful. And I'm watching him turn those skills into talent and become productive. So I'm super glad we have him, and I'm super excited about where he can end up in the future.
All right, thanks for joining us, Coach.
Thanks, Kirk.
All right, guys, see ya.